Hi everyone, this is Guyler-Alaniz and this is FarmHer Talks. Thoughtful conversations to connect and inspire the FarmHer in all of us. Today's episode is brought to you by Nationwide. They are on our side and they're on the side of women in agriculture. And, you know, they have really been an important part of our business for many years. They have partnered up with us and we have worked with women throughout their organization to shine a light on what they do, to help them see what women in agriculture do, to connect them to that. And it's really been a very important part of what we do. And in this series of Everybody Eats that we are working on with our friends at Nationwide, everybody needs to eat and all food starts at the farm. And so continuing that discussion, we're talking about like the ultimate pivot. Okay. And I think it's funny because as I think back to some of the ultimate pivots in my life, there have been many, and some of them bigger than others, right? And maybe it's a relationship pivot. Maybe it's a home pivot. One of the biggest ones I can remember was when I had my first child. Talk about a pivot. And I think this is so bizarre that this is what I remember, but going from being able to like quickly run out of the house and run to Target to grab like 2 or 3 things, maybe wander around for a while, maybe get a coffee while I was there, to being like, oh my gosh, I have a whole nother life that I have to care for and I can't just go. And that is a pivot that doesn't go away. It continues to pivot, but, being a mom, and we're going to jump into talking with Babinec, who is not just a mother, and that's a changing thing for her too, because she's got a little girl who's 1.5 years old, and she's getting ready to have her second child any day now. And so she's not only got that pivot, but she is the sales and marketing manager for Gunthorpe Farms, which is her family farm in Indiana. And they are, to give you an overview of their farm, they are kind of like a start to finish. They do it all. So from raising the pastured poultry all the way up through processing, they have on-farm processing, and all the way through to distribution, right? So they really have managed their own process. But the interesting thing about them was their primary customer up until just recently was high-end restaurants. And so as you can imagine, that has changed massively. So we're going to be talking about how and what they have done to pivot on their farm, because there's, just like all of us, regardless, again, of what type of farm you're in, where you are in the country, if you're not even in a farm or part of a farm, right? Like if you're a small business owner, or maybe if you're just a person in the world, like we've all had this massive, massive shift of how we think about where we go and what we do, how we consume food. And, in thinking about that, I think it's really important for us all to think about not only, again, how we consume food, but how people throughout the supply chain, throughout the food chain, can think about how they can best reach their customers, how they might be able to find help to think about making those pivots, and where they can have those discussions. And so, it's a thing. And so we're going to take it over to Kara here. Okay, so Kara, you guys raise a lot of birds and you have pigs and cattle too, as well, right? So you've got a very diverse.
No cattle.
No cattle. Okay, just
no cattle.
Pigs and birds. Pigs and poultry.
Let's and birds.
Stick with the P. So tell me a little bit about how it's distributed, or up until a few months ago, how your distribution worked.
Yeah. So up until a few months ago, we were servicing primarily upscale restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
Most of our meat was, it's all slaughtered here, processed, and then packaged in bulk bags to go to food service locations. So restaurants, some universities, even the airport, O'Hare Airport, Rick Bayless's location, Frontera Tortoise at the airport, was getting a lot of stuff from us. He even opened a place in Disney Springs that was getting stuff from us. But this is all bulk packaged.
Yep.
In big,
large cuts,
10, 20, 50-pound bags that they can just
Yeah.
use.
Yeah.
There was a lot less labor than what we're seeing now. So now we have kind of
Shifted.
transitioned. Yes.
Yeah. The ultimate pivot.
Yes, the ultimate pivot, because all of these restaurants, universities, even Disney Springs, they all shut down. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
So let me ask you this. Were you selling direct to consumer before? And, or was that something that you had to implement, or was it maybe a smaller portion of what you did?
So we were not set up to sell direct to consumer before that. We have the roll stock packaging machine to do individual packages because we sold to retailers.
Mm-hmm.
So we sold to other people who were then selling direct to consumer. But it was a relatively small portion of our business until however many months ago. How long has this been?
I don't know. It feels like 2 years.
It feels like forever.
Yeah.
So we were not selling anything direct to consumer, to say so. I mean, we would occasionally have some deals at the farm for locals, but nothing compared to what we're doing now.
So let me ask you this. So the world changed overnight, and we realized that, restaurants weren't going to be the thing. What did it look like on your end how did you guys say, here's what we're going to go after? We're going to open up direct to consumer, or did you increase your retailer? Like, how did you make those decisions of where you were going to go and pivot?
Well, it's so funny that you would ask that, because we were, watching the news, of course, and we saw that some of the neighboring states made the announcement to shut down restaurants. And that was on a Sunday, and we're like, oh my gosh, Indiana is going to follow. And at first our thought was Indiana or Illinois is going to follow, and then Indiana will follow too, because those are our two big markets. I think Ohio started it, but so we were just kind of watching it and worried a little. And sure enough, on Monday morning, they made the cancellation, and all of our restaurant sales started texting us, emailing us, sorry, I need to cancel my order for this week.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We have a lot of meat over here. So
I know. We're we've already butchered it at this point.
Yeah.
So we were starting to freak out, and then within 24 hours, we just were bombarded with tons and tons of retailers that we were already selling to, that were wanting to increase their orders, because they were already seeing where people were starting to stock up and looking for meat. So it was a really crazy 24 hours, because we went from, the lowest low, where we were we have a lot of pork hanging in the freezer or hanging in the cooler right now. We're butchering chickens right now. What are we going to do with all this stuff right now?
Right.
To, our phones ringing off the hook just hours after that.
From retailers.
For retailers asking for more product than we could supply.
So the diversification that you already had in your business between the wholesale to restaurants and the retail packaging, that allowed you to make some pivot right away.
Yes,
so and
right away.
You already had the ability to switch it over, but I'm sure that your employees and all of you, increase demand, decrease it all the way on one side and increase it all the way on the other side sounds absolutely crazy.
Yes.
But you guys have transitioned through that. Can you tell me about maybe what some of the challenges were?
So one of the biggest challenges that we've faced has been the constraint point that the retail packaging is. So, we were sending out whole shoulders, whole bellies, whole everything to these restaurants. And now we're having to sell little shoulder roasts that all need cut and packaged individually, individualized pork chops, whereas a lot of restaurants would get racks from us and cut them themselves. And just, running every single thing in small pieces and then through our packaging machine that can only crank out. I mean, it cranks out a lot, but, still can only do so much.
Yeah.
So we're running it full time, both processing shifts, and there are still weeks that we struggle to get everything packaged. So
yeah. So you've got a little bit of a bottleneck there, but you're making it work. And so you've had major pivot on the retail side. tell me about building in that direct to consumer piece, because that's something else that you guys did, right?
Yes. So we also, at the same time that I'm getting bombarded by all these retailers, we're also getting slammed with questions from consumers who really just want to buy directly from us. They want to know their farmer. They realize that this is important now, more so than maybe it has in the past, as grocery stores are sometimes limiting what people can purchase right now. So people are like, I want to have a source, a direct source. And it's always been on our to-do list, but it's never been high enough on our to-do list that we've actually got it done. Because we have several friends that, ship meat to consumers, and we're like, oh, we could do that. Like, we have all of the stuff that it would need. It would take some implementing into our system to make it work. But this really seemed like it was the final kick in the butt that we needed. So,
yeah. So you did it.
So we just jumped in, and my husband, who is our farm manager, he actually decided to take the lead on this, because normally this would be like a project that my processing plant manager, would have kind of took the lead on. But since he's been completely swamped with the whole changing to retail packaging, he just didn't have time on his plate. So my husband, the farm manager, has actually taken on the lead for our shipping program. So he figured out, what insulation is going to go in our boxes, and, created our account with UPS to figure out all the shipping, and got our dry ice all taken care of. And so and then I, set up the website. So we are now live taking orders and shipping to areas that can receive packages within 2 days via ground shipping from us. So it's been exciting, but there's a lot of learning curves on those, but there's been really great resources available right now, because everybody's wanting to learn how to do this.
So what have those resources been for you? I mean, do you have a certain place that you go, like maybe an industry organization or something like that?
So there's a really great group that I'm in on Facebook called Farm Builders Entrepreneurs, and that's just a great resource in general.
Sweet.
But then NPAM, Niche Meat Processors Assistance Network, they host webinars on things like this. So when this all started, they were like, hey, now's the time. I know you've thought about it before. Join our webinar, talk to these people who've already done it.
Yeah.
Learn how to do it yourself, because now is when people want to buy from you.
Yeah.
So.
And, I think the big thing is whatever your network is, you can find one, but if you have some sort of a network that is in farms that are similar to, maybe that's the deal, right? Reach out, connect with others, like think of what you can learn there. And I think, the farming community in general is so open to that. Like, I love to hear that you guys visited White Oak Pastures, because, that was my first thought that this sounds very similar. So, let's work together to figure out how we manage this. So speaking of managing this, what are you guys looking at for the next, the foreseeable future, the next 6 months, the next 12 months? I mean, how do you even know?
It's so hard, because, we were really lucky that all of our eggs weren't necessarily in one basket, since we did have that diversified customer base that was some retailers before. And now those have really picked up, and we've added a bunch of new retailers that are even bigger. And so, now we almost feel like our eggs are all in one basket again, because, we're selling primarily all to retailers.
Right.
So we're trying to figure out how we go about, there's really not a lot of options for diversification right now, because, but we have noticed that, like, this week, some of the restaurants are starting to place smaller orders again. So they're opening their doors as some restrictions are lifted.
Yeah.
So we get to balance that as well, which is going to be hard, because we've been maxed out on product. These retailers lately. So now we have to figure out, almost which customers to prioritize.
Yeah.
When we're
tough.
filling orders. It's so hard.
And not knowing what the future holds is talk about tough. And I think that's any of us in small business, big business, wherever you are. Okay, Kara. So you are in the shoes of the ultimate pivot right now, not only on the farm, but I always think that women, mothers especially, can tend to find themselves in this ultimate pivot situation. And I know that right now you've got a little girl, maybe napping. Maybe I just heard a yell. I'm not sure.
But he's starting to wake up.
Yeah. And again, I so appreciate your patience in us getting our end worked out. But I think that is an important point, right? Like I think back to, when I was in your shoes with my kids that are your age. Oh, I shouldn't say kids. You're getting ready to have another one, right?
Yes. Hopefully my second one is here within the next week.
Yeah. So
any day now.
Maternity leave looks a lot different on farms, because it's not like you can just be like, somebody else handle my job while I tend to this baby, right? And so you're dealing with working with family, pivoting the business, pivoting your family life massively. And so how are you taking care of yourself and hanging in there?
It has been rough. I would be lying if I tried to sugarcoat it at all, because, the whole business pivot has been insane. So my workload has been up, as we deal with new customers and, finding new customers, helping new customers just deal with us and getting all their specs right. And I mean, it's just been a lot on the business side of things. And finally, last week I was like, oh my gosh, I'm having a baby any day now.
Oh my gosh, I'm having a baby.
Yeah, like as if I forgot. But so I have I finally turned on my email autoresponder. So that's, one relief off my shoulders, so everyone else can deal with learning how to respond to these people.
Yeah.
Because, I wasn't completely concerned about it. I mean, I knew that adjusting to life with two kids, when my first one, she's almost 18 months old. I knew that was going to be a huge adjustment anyways. But then with this added pandemic, normally I would be able to rely on my mom or my sister or, my aunt, anybody to come over and help me when I needed it. But since, my dad is still delivering to Indianapolis every week and he's in contact with who knows who, and there's just so much unknown right now that I'm not comfortable with accepting help from anyone outside of my home. So it's, that is going to make things look really different. And, not being able to ask for the help. Because I know that that's something that moms struggle with anyways, is asking for help. But now it's even if I want to ask for help, I can't. So
yeah. And I'm not laughing at you. I'm more laughing out of just, I don't even know what I can't imagine, because it's so many additional layers of complexity. But
it is. And then just on top of all of the pregnancy hormones anyway,
It's
been fun.
Whatever. I'm just going to call you the ultimate pivoter. You're hanging, you sound like you're hanging in there. You're doing fine. And if I have any advice, it's just breathe your way through it. It's, you'll look back and it'll all be somewhat of a fuzzy blur, I'm sure.
I'm sure the next 6 months will just be a blur, and we'll figure it out from there. It'll be okay.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing your farm story and what is going on with your business and how you guys have managed through it so far. And I really think it's an important discussion as people think about how they're going to work through this ever-changing system out there. So thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, of course. You take care and good luck.
Yes, thank you so much.